Greetings. Welcome back. After our break, I'm hoping you're feeling refreshed and ready for the last push toward the end of the semester. Um, let's see if I can remember what I was talking about, because I just uploaded a video and I got a message that it had been deleted because it was too long. How sad for me. So where were you? Did you stay in town? Did you travel? Did you see family? I was in Palm Springs, which is not a place I would voluntarily go to, but I was visiting my brothers and I had a good time. And I experienced a gated community without expiring, so that was all good. It was 90 degrees and almost too hot to hike in the middle of the day. So we're reflecting today on weeks 12 and 13. Starting with week 12, your paper and prompt questions and discussion about bullying was fascinating, were fascinating. Once again, you are becoming very well acclimated social workers, looking at multiple systemic levels. And so I think I'll review each level in turn. Thinking about actually starting with the meso level, I think it's very important to do public education, as you mentioned. Educating educators and parents, community leaders also, I would add, like pastors and the adults who lead youth groups, and also kids themselves, because there's so much about bullying that people in the general public really don't understand. And there are long-held myths that really are contrary to what we now know about bullying, and therefore sort of destructive to positive outcomes. You mentioned in your paper the importance of understanding and educating about the prevalence of bullying. I think that is very important. Some educators, a lot of adults who lead groups of kids, and some parents also don't really think that bullying is a problem. And the issue there is that then kids aren't acknowledged, and their experience isn't validated, and they actually have to suffer in silence because they are afraid they won't be believed, or their pain will be diminished or ridiculed in some way. Some kids may be afraid that their parents will go overboard in their reaction too. That's possible, and make everything worse for them. I think it's important in terms of public education for people to understand that any kid, and that means your kid too, could be a bully or a victim or a bystander. It's also important, as you say, for people to understand that bullying can happen across multiple contexts. It's not just kids being bullied on the playground or beat up. It's important for people to understand that it can happen in cyberspace. It can happen just in gossip. That there's a huge range of context in which bullying can take place. Um, it's important also, as you mentioned, to understand the role of bystanders and how um, how much they contribute to victimization. Um, and several of you, um, and I think this is awesome, several of you, um, actually overall everyone, um, focused much more on celebrating and rewarding pro-social behavior rather than punishing negative behavior, and I think that was a great idea. Um, Several people talked about um, the importance in the wider community and in school um, and in families of zero tolerance for bullying, and I think that's very important in terms of changing um, the norms about what is acceptable um, and changing the myths, um, like kids will be kids, or if you're bullied, it's your own fault. You're just a pansy or a wimp, or you know, it's your own fault that you didn't beat your bully up. That sort of thing. Um, um, Several people talked about the importance of parents as role models, um, and that's so important um, uh, because there's my phone ringing. It's kind of a weird ring, isn't it? Um, it's so important because um, parents, uh, there's lots of different kinds of parents out there, as anyone who's ever worked in schools or preschool knows, and or lived in a family with parents. Um, and parents can be bullies um, to their partners, and that becomes the known universe to kids. Um, um, I loved your idea about peer education, um, and there's so many forms that can take, like peer mediation, um, and um, and uh, that there's a lot of evidence that is very helpful in creating a pro-social environment in schools. You had some great ideas about interventions in schools, like having a bullying awareness week and having non-competitive games. I don't know if you remember, but in the 70s there was a big movement. Uh, this whole non-competitive games movement started in the 70s with these things called new games, non-competitive cooperative games, team building games for large groups of kids. Um, if you Google that, you'll see all kinds of interesting things. Um, it was a great idea to embed pro-social skills in the curriculum and to do early intervention. And I would add that it would be useful to do this education and intervention early and then continuously in school, maybe all the way through college. I bet you've been in some classes where, in college, where there are bullies who shut people down or take up all the airtime. Um, and I bet you've met professors who are bullies. That's a drag. And I think it is important for um, uh, adults to know that bullying can happen in any context. There's certainly plenty of workplace bullying that goes on. Um, and this idea you had of um, creating new norms in which um, um, kids and educators and parents take action when they witness bullying. That's very important. And on a macro level, you talked about the importance of legislation. So all that was great. Now moving on to week 13, you had wonderful ideas about how to counteract destructive gender stereotypes and gender norms. I love it when somebody said Americans, on the macro level, Americans are addicted to beauty, sex, youth, and violence. And their idea of each of these is twisted. I think that is so true. And one wonders, where does that come from? And I'd like to introduce the notion that it's to the advantage of corporations that sell products to make people believe that there is a certain standard or ideal of beauty and masculinity that everyone should be striving to meet, and that people really are inadequate unless they achieve that ideal. And that's not to mention all the possessions and various things that people are told they need in order to be happy. The thing that is striking to me is that ideal is, the Barbie sort of thing, is actually only characteristic of a tiny, tiny percentage of the world's population. The sort of Scandinavian characteristics of long legs and blonde hair and blue eyes and it's amazing that the vast majority of us in the world don't conform to that ideal, and at the same time are indoctrinated to think that we need to fit that ideal as women, or to be Arnold Schwarzenegger if we're men. We need to fit those ideals in order to be adequate or valuable or successful or loved or all those things. If you're a woman and you've had the experience of going to a makeup counter, people are trained there to tell you that without this product and that product, you aren't attractive. I was just visiting family in Palm Springs over the break, and it was incredible to me how homogeneous this particular community was, that people have gone to great lengths to nip and tuck and Botox and this, that, and the other to all look thin and unwrinkled, and it's just really weird to me, but that's just my perspective. One idea I want to introduce is that inherent in these stereotypes is such insidious racism and classism that exacerbates kids' already internalized racism and shame about not having the latest fashions and all that is. It's hard to grow up in a hostile society where you are different, and all of these crazy stereotypes make it just all the harder for kids who don't see themselves reflected, who don't see ourselves reflected, since I never actually met the Barbie ideal myself, in the media and in advertisements and in magazines. And, it's hard on kids to be taught in those ways that they are on the fringe, or they're on the margins, or they don't belong. On the meso level, you had some great ideas. And I would add that it's very helpful for kids to, especially in this middle school time where peer pressure is so overwhelming. I think it is very helpful for kids to participate in community action or political action, or making their own community better through volunteering or projects. I think that is very helpful. And yes, another way for them to get validated for pro-social activities. On a micro level, one thing that you can do is to teach parents and kids to watch TV or look at magazines together, and critique them together in terms of these stereotypes. One time my daughter said, "Mom, how come on all the billboards the men get to wear clothes and the women don't?" And if you're a parent, you know that counteracting all these messages from the mainstream society can be very difficult. For example, one time my daughter said, "Mom, can I have a Barbie?" And I said, "No, sweetheart, I don't think so." "Why not?" "Well, when you find a real person whose legs terminate at their neck and just wants to strut around and drive fast cars and, that sort of thing, then we'll discuss it again." And she said, "Mom, you teach cultural diversity and you are discriminating against Barbie just based on how she looks." You ever had moments like that where your kid just totally brings you up short and you are busted? Well, I still refuse to buy a Barbie, but the problem with Barbies is that they spontaneously generate in various parts of the extended family. And so, yes, she got a Barbie, but it was good because I think she dismembered it in the bathtub sometime later, which made her mommy very happy. That was a great idea, to have school plays in which kids are cooperative and that are and not portraying gender stereotypes, and to have parents come and see those plays. That was a great idea. There could even be discussion groups after those plays. That would be cool. Some other ideas I was thinking of on a micro level would be to teach mindfulness skills to kids, to kind of build their own sense of centeredness and sense of self, so that they're not so reactive and prone to go along with whatever they're pressured by their peers to do. And another possibility would to have classrooms that, for example, have books that are not gender stereotyped, and decorations in classrooms that have, boys doing nurturing things and girls, doing what boys are supposedly supposed to do, and girls and boys working together. And I think that would be helpful. So thank you again for a very interesting conversation. As usual, I'm enjoying myself, seeing what you all are coming up with in your interchange, and I'm particularly appreciative of how supportive you are with each other. So that's all for now, and I'll be appearing soon, maybe when you least suspect it.